My name's Steve Vrooman. I have a business called Keystone Restoration Ecology, and I work in the field of wetland and stream restoration. And I've been brought on to help the Taos Land Trust work on the wetland restoration of this property, the Rio Fernando Park property. It's probably the most exciting project I've worked on in 20 years. It's got so many different pieces of culture and art and agriculture and so many skilled people to work with. And then the wetland is just amazing, and it's so diverse down here. There's just so many just different types of willows and different types of food-bearing plants growing in the wetland. And it just seems like just a, kind of an ideal project really to, just make a small tweak to and make it, healthier and wetter and just more diverse. It'll be great. And we basically work only on systems that have been altered by people. Channels and wetlands are naturally fairly stable and resilient, and until we came and did something to them, or a natural disaster happened or something, they generally don't need restoration. So what is restoration? It's restoring it back to what it was before we altered it. And it's pretty obvious upstream that the river was straightened for about 500 feet. And what that does is it speeds the water up, it makes it steeper, and it actually causes the river to downcut. So we've lost a couple feet of grade in where the river used to be. And so the wetlands dried out some. The river's not meandering back and forth across the valley. And when it meanders, it actually irrigates each downhill side of that meander. It puts water into the groundwater table, and it really wets the entire valley floor. And so we've lost that here. We want to put the stream back in its former meander and meander it across the valley. And then the old channel will become a series of ponds that we're going to actually construct out of dirt and native wetland sod. And so the process is going to be to come in and selectively remove some of about maybe 40 Russian olive trees, some big ones, some small ones, and then come in very carefully and then put the river back in its channel with a small excavator and a small, what we call skid steer, tracked skid steer, and then take the former channel, where the channel is now, that'll become a series of ponds. We're going to plant those ponds with cattails. And then by removing the Russian olives, we also are going to encourage the willows to regrow. And we actually have willows on the property we can actually dig up and transplant with roots, which you don't need to do, but with roots it's going to be even faster, and really regrow the kind of coyote willow component, the red willows. They are providing food for beavers, and there's a healthy beaver population just downhill at Fredbaka Park. And so they are here cutting trees down, trying to make this land back to something they could live on. They probably lived here I'm sure they lived here to begin with. But because of this Russian olive, it's a fast-growing, aggressive, non-native tree that produces nitrogen, it's sort of shaded the willows out. So they can come in and knock a few trees down, but there's not enough food for them to really survive here. And so we actually are kind of doing a wetland restoration project in preparation for the beavers moving in anyways, because we could have the choice of trying to exclude them forever or working with them and helping them move back in here. After, probably 5 or 6 years or maybe 10 years, they will be in here making it a series of ponds, which we have southwestern willow flycatcher really close by. That's an endangered bird species that lives pretty much in beaver ponds and willow cattail marshes, and they'll move sort of 100 feet over this way, and we'll have endangered bird species living here as well. Wetlands are important. They filter water, they capture pollutants, they make clean water, and they store water for us. And they let that water out slowly downstream. And so these become like, back when all these streams were just beaver wetlands, they were just these big sponges that then would keep the streams flowing year-round and keep the water deeper. And instead of our snowmelt being this big whoosh that comes down, it would just soak in these wetlands and drain out again. And just the amount of land that was wet and the amount of carbon that was being stored and the amount of habitat was there was just immense. And Taos still has that. We'll keep the water in the river longer. And generally most of the water will be underground and just feeding the water table. It'll help people's wells downstream. It'll help, people irrigating downstream. And it'll just be a way to capture this stuff. Actually, a lot of runoff comes from town through here. So we're going to help purify that runoff so the water's cleaner as well. And the initial idea was that it's squishy and wet, and we have to be in here when it's frozen so we don't get stuck and we don't make a big mess. Now it's actually fairly dry, which is almost even better. It's a great time to work on wetlands. They're dry. And then we set them up for hopefully this El Nino winter where the snow is going to come down and really soak in and spread across this wetland and re-wet everything, probably wetter than it's been in 50 years. It'll look a little rough. It'll be kind of, the grass will still be there. And then when it warms up in the spring, it's going to be wet and just come back. And a lot of these structures we've been able to build, you can't tell 6 months later they've ever been built. They look like a natural pond. So that's, we imagine the series of ponds and a new stream channel and a little bit of some waterfalls and some fish habitat in that stream channel. And so, I mean, this is a project that, like most ecological projects, you grow it.